Amidst the apparent normalcy of our existence lies a fascinating enigma. The way we live, what we desire, how we understand ourselves, none of it is self-evident. It is the product of complex social, cultural, and technological constructions. Hardly any aspect of our everyday life escapes this dynamic. What we experience as lifestyle or identity is rarely the result of pure self-expression. Rather, it reflects a network of historically evolved patterns, economic constraints, media representations, and linguistic frameworks. To ask whether a life is authentic or constructed might even miss the deeper issue. For even what we call authentic has long since become part of a social game, where authenticity turns into a pose and truth into performance. Sociology uses the term life conduct, coined by Max Weber, which already implies that life doesn't simply happen but is guided by institutions, by milieus, by religions, by economic necessities. But the present introduces a new form of guidance. It appeals to the individual, to the subject as manager of the self. The neoliberal narrative says, you can be anything, if only you want it. And so, countless biographical scripts emerge in which the responsibility for success or failure falls entirely on the individual, accompanied by advice books, coaching formats, self-care tips, and digital self-tracking tools. The construction is no longer repressive but seductive. Freedom appears boundless and yet becomes the subtlest form of compulsion. Michel Foucault described this mechanism as subjectivation. The modern human is not only controlled, but brings themselves into conformity with social norms through practices of self-discipline and observation. This becomes particularly visible in the body. Beauty ideals, health norms, fitness trends, they produce an image of the right body that many internalize, even when they seemingly resist it. On social media, the body becomes a projection surface for discipline, self-love, success, or protest. Even resistance often takes on forms already culturally legible. Love, long viewed as the epitome of spontaneity and truth, is also subject to construction. Dating apps, relationship advice, types of partnerships, all these forms standardize the most intimate sphere, prescribing how one should connect, communicate, evolve. Hannah Arendt, in her work The Human Condition, sees action as the highest form of human freedom because it is unpredictable, plural, and dialogical. But in a world of constructed ways of living, even action loses its openness when it is constantly oriented towards optimized effect, the right moment, or the right audience. Authenticity becomes a strategy, even in love. Literature reflects these developments with keen sensitivity. Franz Kafka, for instance, depicts characters powerless against a system with no clear center, a precursor to what we now call structural power. In pop culture, too, we encounter constructed lives. In series like Black Mirror, where technology and identity are inseparably fused, or in influencer realities where the everyday becomes a performance. Every post, every story follows a code. Aesthetics, hashtags, algorithms. The line between life and display, between being and seeming, begins to blur. But is construction inherently problematic? Not necessarily. Humans have always been cultural beings, homo faber, beings who shape themselves. Philosophers like Richard Rorty or Judith Butler argue that identity is always performative, always made. The difference may lie in whether we recognize constructions and learn to navigate them, or blindly follow. Critical thinking, aesthetic practice, and political education might open up spaces where life is no longer merely a product, but a process. Tentative, vulnerable, creative. In this light, the constructed way of life is not the end of freedom, but its beginning, if understood as a conscious, shared, and solidaric project. So the question is not whether we live in constructions, but how we live with them, how we make them visible, where we challenge them, when we break them open, and how we create spaces together in which other ways of being, thinking, and loving become possible. Perhaps true freedom does not lie in absolute choice, but in collective design. In those moments when not everything is possible, but something becomes imaginable that once seemed unthinkable.